South Dakota Senate will come to order. Welcome, everybody. Leading us in prayer, we welcome to Pierre and her first time to pray with and for and over us, Pastor Valerie Hummel-LaBounty from the Southeast Methodist Church, which she grew up in Yankton. And our page of the day is Josie Silty from Ipswich, leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us pray. Almighty God, in a world of change, you placed eternity in our hearts and gave us power to discern good from evil. Grant us sincerity that we may persistently seek the things that endure, refusing those which perish, and that amid things vanishing and deceptive, we may see the truth steadily, follow the light faithfully, and grow ever richer in that love which is the life of all people. Through Jesus Christ our Savior. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Secretary, will please call the roll.
Senator Boland, Kamak, Cronin, Kurd, Ewing, Frerichs, Greenfield, Haverly, Heiner, Jensen, Kennedy, Killer, Klum, Colbeck, Langer, Maher, Monroe, Nelson, Neseba, Netherton, Norstrup, Otten, Partridge, Peters, Rush, Russell, Sohol, Solano, Stalzer, Sutton, Tapio, Tiedemann, White, Wick, and Youngberg. We have a quorum, Mr. President.
Approval of the journal.
Mr. President, the Committee on Legislative Procedure respectfully reports that the Secretary of the Senate has had under consideration the Senate Journal of the 5th day. All errors, typographical or otherwise, are duly marked in the temporary journal for correction, and we hereby move the adoption of the report. Senator Greenfield, Chair.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carried. Huge round of applause for the Sergeant at Arms for putting lights on. Way to go. Coming out of the dark. That's what we're doing. A couple of pause here before we get on with business, and thank you all for being here. I'd like to do some introductions. Especially want to welcome you who are physically here, and also thank the people of South Dakota Public Broadcasting for doing the live stream. A lot of individuals follow us through, and we really appreciate that. Let's start out with, on behalf of Senators Larry Tiedemann and John Wick, we have the Brookings and SDSU days. Is the president here? President Dunn? Okay, go Yotes. We'll wait till he shows up. He's kind of a slow one, that Barry, but we'll do it more officially when he comes up, and let's not tell him I already spoke about him, but we'll do that. Of course, it's a real privilege always to have the South Dakota FFA district and state officers. We have Dalton Larson, who's the president, Clayton Sorum, who's the vice president, Secretary April Hamilton, Treasurer Aaron Linke, reporter Avery Gilchrist, and Ellie Moon is the Sentinel. Sentinel, please, who's the Sentinel? What a cool name, right? We feel protected because there's the Sentinel. That's excellent. Well, congratulations to you as leaders, but we know from a number of people right here on the floor that were involved in FFA that you're leaders for life. So welcome, and it's a real privilege, and thank you to your chaperones for bringing you. FFA. This is always a very special day when we have our boys and girls state governors that are here, but since this will be my last time to be able to do that introduction, as a life member of the American Legion and also working with the American Legion Auxiliary, would you please, I think everybody knows how dedicated these individuals are to this program. My grandfather was a state commander of the Legion and was very dedicated to it from Watertown. But would all of the auxiliary and individuals from the Legion that are hatted here or not, would you all please stand before I introduce them? And thank you for what you do for us, and especially for this great program. And Royce, all the hair around here looks great because of you. Aye, that's it. I would ask that Ruhama Tarita please stand. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the Girl State Governor here, and she is from, are you from Sioux Falls? I think this is wrong. Are you from Sioux Falls? I've heard of that. It's a city in the eastern part of the state. And you also have your father, Ayala Wolde, right here. Ayala, your father is here? And your mother? Your father is here? Where is he? Oh, hi. Hi, congratulations. That's incredible. That's really great. Governor, great to have you here. Congratulations. Governor of Girl State. That is outstanding. And Bridger Gordon. We have commemorations that will show up tomorrow. They were what my second grade son would call a sloppy copy. They're just not right. So they're going to work on them. They don't have you listed here from Whitewood, South Dakota. A great community. And we really thank you, Governor, for being here. And your father is here as well, or your mother, Kendra. Where's your mother? Thank you for him and your leadership. We learn this from family and friends and, of course, the individuals who fought for our freedom. So, Governor Gordon, welcome. Both of you, stand up. All of you. Also remind you, American Legion reception tonight at the American Legion here. Coincidentally, it's the American Legion Hall downtown. We also, at this stage of the game, I want to encourage all of you young people. A few of us were pages, as I'm fond of saying I was when Tyrannosaurus Rex roamed the earth. And you can do that as a junior and senior, and you can see these young people if you ask them. We really think it's an important part of continuing and understanding and demystifying your government, and you're being participating. They're taking pictures of me right now. Thank you. Good. At this time, we have flags being distributed in memory of the late Governor Joe Foss, who was a Medal of Honor winner, former governor, and he was Air Force. I can't, oh, that was really strong. He was Air Force. That was, well, no, well, yeah, you don't have a hua or anything, you just, anyway, in case you're on a game show coming up to the football world, he was also the first president of the American Football League. And he and a number of people put that together in the Sportsman Association and NRA and all of that. These are flags provided by the Joe Foss Institute of Arizona, where he moved later in life. And flags are provided by the American Legion Junior Auxiliary. Cassandra Gerlach and Brianna Gerlach, are you here? Right there. Please stand and thank you. Thank you. I would also point out, thank you so much. I would also point out that our Hall of Honor, when you came into the back door, if you turn to the right there, that is for individuals who have served in the military and received the Medal of Honor. We have one individual who's living now, that's Michael Fitzmaurice. This was a memorial that was across the way. It was inaccessible. The governor and I arranged for that to be transferred here so it's more accessible and updated, and the staff that did that is beautiful. The most recent was Colonel Thorsness, who passed away. He will be buried next month, and I've been talking with his family in Arlington, and my wife Karen and I will go and represent the state at that internment. So if you have the opportunity, if you fully want to understand why we're free, read the citations. It's incredibly important down there, and it describes, in addition to the medal, which is not awarded, they received it for their gallantry. You will see that, and it's incredibly humbling every time I walk by it. And Joe Foss is up there, and it's part of that same heroism that we celebrate today so that we can go ahead and govern. So thank you so much. Do we have SDSU here yet? Okay, we'll wait until... yeah. See, so if you were in the Air Force, that's how you would yell. Okay. Always help the slow ones out there, will you? Okay. And we really thank Dr. Neil Burns. Where's Dr. Burns? He's probably too busy. Oh, there you are. Dr. Burns is here as a doctor of the day. He volunteered his whole day for us, and his other team is covering for him back at Avera St. Mary's. He's an emergency medicine physician here, and he actually is received his family practice medicine residency in Sioux City, and he also covers the emergency department, and obviously very active in the medical association, and just a very good group here, doctor. And so we thank you for taking care of us. I know there's been quite a few illnesses, and we've kept you busy already today. Would you please stand and let us thank you? Dr. Burns. Oh, we got a late message coming in. Okay. We'll look at this a little later. Volga here? Cossacks? I don't see him yet. Okay. Okay, our business today is, pretty slim, but we have to run through some items that are quick. I know the FFA people, you're getting ready to go, so thank you very much, and head out, and appreciate it. So we'll move on now. Reports of standing committees.
The Committee on Transportation reports that it has had under consideration Senate Bills 23, 41, and 42 and recommends that all three do pass to be placed on the consent calendar. Senator Stalzer, Vice Chair. Committee on State Affairs reports that it has had under consideration Senate Bills 9 and 20 recommending do pass, Senate Bill 13 recommending do pass as amended, and recommends deferring Senate Bill 5 to the 41st legislative day. Senator Ewing, Chair. And the Committee on Health and Human Services reports that it has had under consideration Senate Bill 60 recommending do pass, Senate Bill 17 do pass to be placed on the consent calendar, and Senate Bill 32 do pass as amended. Senator Sohold, Chair.
Messages, please.
Mr. President, I have the honor to transmit House Bills 1001, 1003, 1004, and 1006, which have passed the House, and your favorable consideration is requested. Sandy Zinter, Chief Clerk.
Oh, this is going to be so exciting. I've been waiting for this one. Motions and resolutions.
Senate Concurrent Resolution Number 1. A concurrent resolution honoring the memory and accomplishments of President Grover Cleveland. Senator Boland moves that SCR 1 is found on page 95 of the Senate Journal be adopted.
Unfortunately, all the students left. I should not have allowed them to be dismissed, but because of the great intersection of our state and Grover Cleveland, Professor, I'm sure you will take us down that path. Remarks?
I will. Well, thank you, Mr. President. I must say that I just have to make a personal comment. It brought back a lot of memories when I see the young people in the gallery, because I did have the privilege to attend Boys State in the summer of 1968. That would be 50 years ago. So it was very, brought back a lot of memories when I certainly was not governor, I can assure you of that, but it did bring back many memories. I'd like today to speak about the life of Grover Cleveland, who served as both our 22nd and 24th president. He's the only person to serve non-consecutive terms as President of the United States. Cleveland was born in 1837 in New Jersey, the son of a Presbyterian minister. His father died when Grover was 16, and so he had to quit school to take care of his mother and his siblings. His family had moved to Buffalo, New York by this time, and Cleveland continued to support his mother and siblings as a young apprentice attorney. Now, Cleveland was upset by the corruption that he saw and observed in the sheriff's office in Erie County. And so in 1870, he ran for sheriff, and at the age of 33, he was elected to this important office. He worked hard to clean up the department and had some success, but he realized he needed more authority, and so eventually in 1881, he ran for mayor of Buffalo, the second largest city in New York, and was elected to that office, pledging reform. From this position, 1 year later, he was elected governor of New York, the largest state in the Union at that time, again pledging reform and opposing the corruption of the political machine that ran New York City and much of the state, which of course was known as Tammany Hall. His slogan in that election in 1882, winning the governorship of New York, was, "A public office is a public trust." And this remained his slogan in all future elections. And if I could just give a word of advice to everyone here, have a slogan. I've got mine, 4 words. Hopefully I live up to it. Personal integrity, professional competence. That's the 4-word slogan that I run on. So make that little suggestion to all of you. Now, Cleveland was soon encouraged to run for president in 1884. No Democrat had been elected since the Civil War. The country was, for the most part, evenly divided. The Republican candidate was the famous Senator James Blaine of Maine. Easy to remember. I used to tell that to students. The campaign of 1884 for the presidency was brutal, as what we call today opposition research was very active. It was found out that Cleveland, who was a bachelor at that time, had fathered a child. The slogan, "Ma, ma, where's my pa? Well, he's going to the White House, ha, ha, ha," became part of the political lexicon of the day. However, Blaine also had major problems as well, with political scandals plaguing him from his long and well-known political career. And after a brutal campaign in 1884, Cleveland was narrowly elected. Now, at this time in American history, in 1884, a major issue was the admission of new states into the country. There were potentially, at that time in the early 1880s, 6 states that could come into the Union. Those would be current states of Washington, Idaho, North and South Dakota, Wyoming, and Montana. And this was very important politically, not so much in the House of Representatives, but in the United States Senate. There were a lot of people who were very leery of admitting 6 new states and 12 new senators into the United States Senate in a very short period of time. And Cleveland was one of those. You know, every generation there's different issues. Today, the admission of new states into the country, really not that big of an issue. Back in the 1880s, it was really quite a big issue in the country. Should we let all these states into the Union in a relatively short period of time? The key issue for the Dakota Territory was whether or not the territory would be divided into 2 states or would be admitted as 1 state. The people in the South wanted a division of the territory into 2 states, but Cleveland wanted only 1 state. Unfortunately, during his first term, the stalemate continued, and no progress was made in the admission of the Dakotas into the Union. The Cleveland administration would not yield on its desire for just 1 state, and the people in the southern area, of course our state today, in particular, would not settle for 1 state, with Bismarck, who was now the territorial capital, being the likely state capital of just 1 state. Finally, the election of 1888 settled the issue. The Republicans nominated Benjamin Harrison of Indiana, the grandson of a former president, to run against Cleveland. The country remained very divided politically, and in a close race, which Cleveland again prevailed in the popular vote, he lost the electoral vote to Harrison. We're quite familiar with that in our recent history. Cleveland, in the last days of his administration, decided to relent on the issue of the admission of 2 states within the Dakota Territory. he agreed to sign the measures that would allow 2 states to be admitted. No one knows which he signed first, but ironically, the president who delayed the admission of the 2 states authorized this very action. Other notable events surrounding Cleveland's life are the fact that in 1886, while president, at the age of 49, he was married to Frances Folsom, a 21-year-old woman who was the daughter of a young friend. From this union, 5 children were born, and Cleveland's wife very definitely is the youngest first lady we've ever had in the history of the United States. And by the way, at some point in time in the future, we will have a first husband. I'm quite confident of that. Cleveland was the first president to be married in the White House. Also in 1892, Cleveland had an electoral rematch with President Harrison. For the 3rd time in a row, he won the popular vote, and this time he also prevailed in the Electoral College. Cleveland remains, along with Franklin Roosevelt, the only president to have won the popular vote more than twice in the country. And in reading about this, the election of 1892 was also a very unusual election in the country because it was very, might say, very passive. Harrison's wife was very ill in 1892 and died just about 2 weeks before the election actually took place. And he refused to campaign. The Republican incumbent was much more interested in tending to his wife and taking care of her than going out and campaigning. And Cleveland did very little campaigning as well. So it's probably the most passive election campaign for the presidency we've ever had in the history of the country. Cleveland, again, along with Franklin Roosevelt, remains the only candidate in U.S. history to win the popular vote more than twice. Cleveland's last term was very difficult as economic conditions worsened in the country, especially in rural areas. He left office in 1897 and died in 1908 at the age of 71. He is buried in New Jersey. A small museum honoring his life exists in the town of his birth, Caldwell, and this resolution, if passed, will be sent to that location. Cleveland never visited South Dakota, but his actions impacted the history and the development of our state, and I thank you very much for your time.
Always entertaining. I think somebody wants to break out in some songs from the musical Oklahoma, but not right now. Any further remarks? That was really great as usual. Hearing none, the question before the Senate is Senator Boland's motion that SCR 1 be adopted. Those in favor of adoption will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Boland?
Aye.
Kamak? Aye. Cronin? Aye. Kurd? Aye. Ewing? Aye. Frerichs? Aye. Greenfield? Aye. Haverly? Aye. Heinert? Aye. Jensen? Aye. Kennedy? Aye. Killer? Aye. Klum? Aye. Kolbeck? Aye. Langer? Aye. Maher? Aye. Monroe? Aye. Nelson? Aye. Nesseba? Aye. Netherton? Aye. Norstrup? Aye. Otten? Aye. Partridge? Aye. Peters? Aye. Rush? Aye. Russell? Aye. Sohold? Aye. Solano? Aye. Stalzer? Aye. Sutton? Aye. Tapio? Aye. Tiedemann? Aye. White? Aye. Wick? Aye. Youngberg? Aye. Nesseba? Aye. Mr. President, there are 35 yeas.
Senator Boland's motion that SCR 1 be adopted, having received a majority vote of the members elect, is hereby declared passed, so adopted, and shall be shipped off to New Jersey.
Senator Greenfield moves that Senate Bills 3, 4, and 6 be referred from the Committee on State Affairs to the Committee on Senate Appropriation.
All those in favor of that re-referral signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Senator Greenfield moves that Senate Bill 74 be referred from the Committee on Judiciary to the Committee on Health and Human Services.
All those in favor of that re-referral signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carried. Please now welcome, on behalf of Senators Larry Tiedemann, John Wick, and other individuals that have spent some time in Brookings and graduates of SDSU. We have Brookings and SDSU Day. President Barry Dunn and Mayor Keith Corbett. General's here too. Where's the general? General Corbett? Oh, he's AWOL. Tell him. That's excellent. I've always wanted to call it General AWOL. That's pretty neat. The city council and everyone, just such great leaders, such a phenomenal community in the years that we've been exposed to them. And also, on behalf of me personally, thank you for the cheese, and my future angioplasty thanks you as well. I really love it. It's very, very good. So thank you so much for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, Brookings and SDSU Day. Our next order of business is consideration of committee reports.
Senator Curd moves that the reports of the Standing Committee on Education on Senate Bill 66, as found on page 89 of the Senate Journal, be adopted.
All those in favor of adoption signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carried. Now we have Joint Select Committee consideration. Ladies and gentlemen, we had that report yesterday, and so this is on your calendar. It's strange it's reported out as a joint select, but it's really legislative procedures. That's how it comes out. And so those were the changes distributed yesterday. And these are subject to debate and roll call, because if they are adopted as joint rules here and by the House, then they will become the rules for our session. We're operating under temporary rules. Please proceed.
Senator Curd moves that the report of the Joint Select Committee relative to the joint rules of the 93rd legislative session, as found on page 91 of the Senate Journal, be adopted.
Comments on that motion? Hearing none. Any remarks? All those in favor, Senator Nelson.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
It's my understanding there's going to be somebody getting up talking about this, so I was a little bit slow in the get up.
No worries.
Well, I do rise in opposition to passing this. I know that there's considerable angst over in the House by our esteemed colleagues on certain aspects of this. I guess the portions that I find the most egregious that I rise to oppose is our joint rules in regards to sexual harassment prohibited. This legislative body has witnessed, and the people of South Dakota have witnessed over the last, say, decade, some serious, egregious violations of ethical codes here in the legislature. And the rules that we're looking at passing now are basically the rules that were unofficially in effect at the time. That if someone viewed or witnessed or perceived a violation of this, that they would report it to the presiding officer of each chamber or either chamber. As we know from past circumstances, this system failed catastrophically. We are not only entrusted with representing our constituents on important issues, but also we're entrusted with protecting the integrity of this body and the process. Folks, we need more teeth in our reporting process. We need more reliability in our reporting process. I know that there are some provisions that were discussed and forwarded for consideration that I do believe we need to give further consideration of before we change the rules in this aspect. In regards to the provisions that seeks to silence anybody's opposing opinion or dissenting opinion in some of these rule changes, we're seeing across our nation, we're seeing even legislation here that is designed to safeguard the provisions, the important provisions of the freedom of speech. This country was founded on the opposition of the minority against the majority rule. It is a treasured and cherished tradition in this country to protect that opposition speech. Yet here we have several rules that seek to make the South Dakota legislature a safety zone, where we're going to silence the voice of the minority opposition on issues that they find egregious or cannot stomach. If we are right in our majority opinion or our majority position, then we should have the courage and the ability to humor opposition against our position. And I would caution you, we are once again looking to subvert the process of the legislature as it has been for centuries by taking away the voice of the minority. Now, right now, many of you sit in the relaxing comfort of believing that you're in the majority and that this is going to continue and that you're going to agree with every decision the majority is going to pass from here until you leave this held office. It's a short-sighted vision. There may be circumstances that come up where you're going to vehemently disagree with the majority's position, and yet if you pass these rules, you are not going to be able to put your voice into the annals, the history of this illustrious body, and express yourself. You are giving the censorship over to stating that if someone finds your position to be not decorous or respectful, that they can dismiss your entire opposition without exactly stating what they disagree with as far as decorum or respectful language. If we wish to pass these rules, then we need to put in there to protect every one of our rights and the future legislators that comes, ability to put into the record books, into the journal, what they disagree with. It's your right, it's your duty, it's your obligation as a representative of the people of South Dakota. Now, we don't have this in just one spot. We're not looking just to silence opposition in one spot. We're looking to not only create a safety zone right here on the floor of the people, but we're also looking to do so in committee process, where it's supposed to be a relaxed setting. Folks, more and more we're seeing that instead of embracing the good and wise precedential parliamentary law in Mason's manual, we're looking to subvert the process and come up with our own ways to silence debate and avoid someone having a contradictory position that goes against what we believe in. That goes directly against the grain of what we're here to do. If we're going to enact these, at least put in the safety protocols that if the body disagrees with someone's dissenting or protest report, that they have to cite specifically what they disagree with so that the proposing party has something to go on. It's not just we're dismissing your whole dissenting report. And in regards to the aspects of in the committee process, in the dissenting report, we're giving the total authority over to a chair's arbitrary decision and saying that a chair can summarily dismiss someone's dissenting position if they feel it's not respectful of the process. I hope you see the dangers of this. If the people wanted the entire power of their legislative body relegated to one person, we wouldn't have three branches of government, we'd have a dictatorship. Anytime we start whittling away at each of our individual authority as legislators and abdicating that authority and giving that authority over to someone else, not only are we betraying our trust to our constituents, we're betraying the legislators that follow us. I'd ask you to oppose the passage of this. We need to send it back for numerous reasons that I won't go into further detail on. But just the ones that I've highlighted here today, realize that at some juncture in time, whether you agree with it or not, you may be in the party where you want your position on paper and you want to make sure it's heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Further remarks, Senator Greenfield. Good afternoon, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the body, first of all, it's my first opportunity to speak on the floor this year, and it's good to see everybody back. And I do apologize that I wasn't quick to jump up and provide some proponent testimony on this matter, but what you have before you is a package of changes to obviously our joint rules. We've dealt with a proposed change and subsequently adopted the change to the Senate rules last week to establish the Military and Veterans Affairs Committee. All of these issues have come before the Executive Board and have been dealt with through the legislative procedures process as well. They have had thorough hearings and have been debated at length. So I'd like to just speak to the opposition that was just spoken to here on the floor. Relative to the sexual harassment or legislator conduct policy, at the previous speaker's urging, last year we put in place a policy, a statement as to what was appropriate relative to legislators' interactions with pages and interns and other legislative employees, and what was appropriate relative to interns and pages and other legislative employees' interactions. And we certainly want to express to the public that we take these things very seriously. When we come to work in Pierre, it is not a free-for-all, and I don't want anybody to be left with that impression. This year, at the minority leader's urging, we took up the issue briefly and subsequently decided to appoint a subcommittee that will study in depth our policy on legislator conduct. And they will report back at such time as is appropriate. The intention is to make sure that we get it right. We have a policy in place. That policy presumably will work for the next several days to several weeks while we hash things over and try to fill any voids that exist relative to our policy conduct, or our policy statement relative to our conduct. So that issue is essentially settled for the moment. Expect to see more at the end of session. I do appreciate the senator for bringing that forward. I appreciate the committee for their deliberation relative to the issue and for capitulating and allowing me to choose to appoint a subcommittee to further delve in. Relative to dissenting reports, this is an issue that I've been around for a long time, but I've never rendered a dissenting report. I do know that those reports are used more often in some circumstances than in others, and I also want to express my respect for that process. Until last year, we had never seen a dissenting report rejected by the body and sent back to the author for emendation. I didn't even know that the word emendation existed. But what I think we see, ladies and gentlemen of the body, is in this day and age of social media and what have you, people are failing to communicate in so many instances. If we were just to say, hey, what's your problem with what I've put forward? And I'm not trying to speak to anybody in particular. This is more broad than just the issue of dissenting reports. Were we to just have respect for our fellow man or fellow men and women, I don't mean to be sexist here on the floor, and just say, hey, I understand you have a problem with something I've written. What is it? I'd like to address it. We could get a lot of things done, and we could do so in an expedited fashion. Instead of playing a game of cat and mouse in which I pretend I don't know what it is that's wrong with something I've said, and that somebody else won't divulge to me what it is that their problem is with me. I realize the tone is becoming more and more shrill, largely because of the world that is out there, that is around us, that we live in, again, relative to Facebook posts and Twitter posts, and this goes for absolutely everybody. Blog posts, it's becoming more and more unfortunate how we treat people or don't treat people. But I would just encourage people to understand a dissenting report initially should be respectful and shouldn't be objectionable. We can honestly disagree with each other, and there should be no problem with that. It's when we become, again, more shrill in our tone, the problems begin to arise. So I would encourage people to state their case, do so succinctly, and not get personal on either front. Neither the person who issues a dissenting report or the parties who do, nor the people who may choose to challenge that. And I would also note that in the previous speaker's closing, he said that there are a number of issues relative to our rules that are before us today, but he didn't want to go into those here. And that's, part of the problem. If there are other problems that should be enumerated, they ought to be so that if this goes back to the Legislative Procedure Committee, they can delve in and take a look at everything. As the chair of the committee, I think the Legislative Procedure Committee did good work. I'm not saying that I agreed with everything, but in the end, I agree with what is before you today. And I'm asking you to accept it as a package, and would stand by for questions relative to any of the specific policy decisions that have been proposed. But again, appreciate your time, appreciate your service, and I ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Jensen. Good afternoon, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. Question for the President Pro Tem.
Please state your question.
And this may be naivety on my part, but do we have a definition of sexual harassment in statute?
President, Senator Greenfield, do you wish to answer the question?
I'm sorry, I can't answer it right offhand. If I was given a few moments, I may be able to find something.
I'll interject.
Thank you.
Senator Jensen, just as I'm the traffic cop on rules, it would be 1 Bravo-3 in your rules. So it's 1 Bravo TAC 3, which is professional conduct and civility. And then this rule is just being added, is being moved as it relates to the definition of sexual harassment. And then the actual investigative procedure also is in your Senate rules for the establishment of a committee. It's actually what happened in the House last year. So that would be under Chapter 8 of the Senate rules, but the actual professional conduct and civility is harassment, and it is a definition there. I will also say that that was part of Senator Sutton's, I sit on this committee as an ex officio, but Senator Sutton had put that in there as well. Senator Greenfield, anything further? Senator Jensen, you have the floor, sir. Okay. Further remarks? Does anybody wish to speak before Senator Nelson speaks again? Okay, thank you. Senator Nelson, welcome back.
Thank you, sir. I will accept the President Pro Tem's unspoken invitation to get up and speak about the rest of the issues. I will try and keep it concise and not regurgitate what I've already said. In regards to, folks, I've been up here, this is my 6th year. I've been aware of former legislators that act as lobbyists up here. I've never had any problems with any lobbyists up here, whether they were former legislators or experts in their specific realm of expertise. We give a lot of credence to our presiding officers and having the ability to control decorum on the Senate and the House floor, and it's been maintained as far as I've seen. I'm concerned with the rule that was proposed that would specifically cite specific members of this body in saying that prohibiting certain aspects. I think it's already taken care of in our rules. I think it was mean-spirited that was brought forward according to what my understandings are. So I do rise to oppose that rule. I don't think it's necessary. I think our presiding officers have shown that they're able to maintain decorum in here and that they do so in a genteel and a social fashion. In regards to the proposed Rule 5-9, division of the question, again, folks, we're seeing knee-jerk reactions trying to oppose rules that were put into place to affect both, to help facilitate the candid and honest discussion that's supposed to occur in this body. Now, the division of the question is a long-held parliamentary procedure. It's highlighted in Mason's rules. It's there for a reason. But, and the irony, folks, is Our state constitution explicitly states that no bill shall have more than one subject, and that subject shall be clearly identified in the title of the bill. But right here, what we're doing is we want to silence any opposition to any unconstitutional omnibus bill by taking away the only safety valve that we have in our rules to address that constitutional violation. And my question to you is, why? Because some legislators studied the rules and used that parliamentary procedure to slow down the rush to pass an unconstitutional omnibus bill. And for those listening at home, an omnibus bill is a bill that contains multi-subjects. It is the bane of our existence as a country that Congress allows this to happen. They shove everything from the kitchen sink to scoop shovels into a bill, and that's how our national debt has exploded. South Dakotans, in their infinite wisdom, passed it in our Constitution that every bill shall contain only one subject, not roads and scoop shovels to get a bill passed. Division of the question is a parliamentary procedure designed so that you can oppose unconstitutional bills. Now, folks, some of you folks have served with me. You know that come Hades and high water, I'm going to do my job. And if you put a roadblock up in one area, I'm going to use the process to go at it in another way. Here you're inviting me, if I submit a dissenting report, you're saying you want to play games with it and oppose it, and then you're throwing the gauntlet down saying I get another bite at the apple on another day to make my case to those people out there. If you want to put that rule into effect, you know I'll accept the challenge. So, folks, these rules are there for all of us. Protect your own ability to represent the people of South Dakota. Oppose these rules. Send them back to the drawing board. They need amendation. Thank you, folks.
Thank you. Further remarks? Hearing none, the question before, Senator Greenfield.
Thank you, Mr. President. And because you were quick to the trigger, I'll try to be quick in my comments. But I do apologize to the body for asking the question of the senator. I should have actually, as I was speaking those words, I thought, I know he's going to accept this as a challenge. So, nonetheless, I do appreciate knowing more as to what the objections are relative to the policy on legislators, former legislators who become lobbyists. I would agree that this hasn't been a problem because all the former legislators who have come back as lobbyists have been respectful of the fact that if they were to come onto the floor in the hours that our doors are closed, they would be breaching, I guess, an unwritten rule. The funny thing is, I always thought it was a written rule. I, for 16 years of my 18, have operated under the assumption that whether it was somebody who I had tangled with or somebody who had served in the legislature prior, that they were not allowed on the floor during those hours that the general public is not able to be on the floor. So simply putting this in place, I think, is a good statement as to what unwritten policy existed. And I will tell you, last year, it's shocking. Last year, at the beginning of session, there were some people who said, well, our policy relative to conduct works. We don't need to put a statement in as to sexual misconduct. Well, as session unfolded, we understood there was an increasing need for that. So I would say that to put in place a policy, a written policy relative to how former legislators are treated when they come back as lobbyists is not inappropriate. I think that it's wholly appropriate, and I don't think that we should suggest for 1 second that somebody breaching the public trust and coming into the chamber to lobby a bill when the rest of the public is not allowed to do so is appropriate. I said I'd be brief. I'm going to touch on one more thing, and that is the division of the question issue. To my knowledge, this has not been done successfully over 18 years. It's been tried. There may have been 1 or 2 instances. I can't point to anything. So again, not an issue that probably has much relevance relative to the legislative process, because our bills, you can argue all day long as to whether an all-encompassing catch-all title relative to education allows for there to be a few peripheral issues folded in, but if the title is all-encompassing enough, every issue contained therein can be germane to the title. And that's why perhaps related issues but not directly connected issues are sometimes in the same bill. But again, I'm not familiar with any times that the division of the question motion has succeeded, and I think that it's more appropriate that we allow for the question to be divided in committee as it pertains to amendments and what have you, but once a bill comes to the floor, that we deal with that bill. And should there be a question as to something not pertaining to the title, it can be amended out. Keep that in mind. This is South Dakota. That's the legislative process. If you don't like something about a bill, don't make a motion to divide the question. Make a motion to amend out what's objectionable and make your case. With that, I ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks? Hearing no further remarks, the question before the Senate is Senator Curd's motion that the joint rules of the 93rd legislative session be adopted. All those in favor of adoption of the rules will vote aye. Those opposed to adoption will vote no. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Boland. Aye. Kamak. Aye. Cronin. Aye. Kurd. Aye. Ewing. Aye. Frerichs. Aye. Greenfield. Aye. Haverly. Aye. Heinert. No. Jensen. No. Kennedy. Aye. Killer. No. Klum. Colbeck? Aye. Langer? No. Maher? Aye. Monroe? No. Nelson? Nay. Nessebar? Aye. Netherton? No. Norstrup? Aye. Otten? Aye. Partridge? Aye. Peters? Aye. Rush? Aye. Russell? Soholt? Aye. Solano? Aye. Stalzer? Nay. Sutton? No. Tapio? No. Tiedemann? Aye. White? Aye. Wick? Nay. Youngberg? Aye. Mr. President, there are 23 yeas, 12 nays.
Senator Curd's motion, having received a majority vote of the members elect, is hereby declared passed, and the joint rules of the 23rd legislative session within the report of the Joint Select Committee is so adopted. Senators, would you please welcome back, he's smart, he came here first, I'm sure, former Speaker Val Rausch. Speaker, good to see you. Sit. This is the fun place anyway. You've already seen some of the fun. First reading of Senate bills.
Senate Bill 79, an act to authorize for voters with no party affiliation to sign nominating petitions for candidates with a party affiliation. Senate Bill 80, an act to establish term limits for members of the Board of Regents. Senate Bill 81, an act to revise certain provisions regarding the Building South Dakota Fund and the programs funded thereunder. And finally, Senate Joint Resolution Number 2, a joint resolution proposing and submitting to the electors at the next general election an amendment to the Constitution of the State of South Dakota relating to the militia of the state.
Senate Bill 80 will be heard by Education. 81 Joint Appropriations and State Affairs will hear Senate Bill 79 and Senate Joint Resolution 2. First reading of House bills.
House Bill 1001, an act to revise the membership of the Executive Board of the Legislative Research Council. 1003, an act to revise certain provisions concerning the content of the campaign finance disclosure reports and to declare an emergency. 1004, an act to revise certain provisions regarding petition forms for initiated measures and initiated amendments to the Constitution. And finally, 1006, an act to revise the extent of comments required by the Director of the Legislative Research Council regarding certain ballot measures and the period of time in which those comments are to be made.
State Affairs will hear all of the bills, House Bill 1001, 1003, 1004, and 1006. And now we go on to a consent calendar, which is a non-debatable calendar dealing with the consideration of appointments and advice and consent. Please proceed.
The Senate proceeds to the consideration and executive reappointments of Kenneth Albers, Canton, South Dakota, to the Board of Pardons and Paroles, and Krista Herring Graber of Freeman, South Dakota, to the South Dakota Interstate Compact for Adult Supervision, and the judicial interim and reappointment of Shannon Ryder Osborne, Rapid City, South Dakota, to the Board of Pardons and Paroles.
These are on the consent calendar. Any questions, senators? Hearing none, then the question before you is advice and consent. Do you advise and consent to the reappointments of Ken Albers and Krista Herron Graber, as well as Sharon Ryder Osborne? Those in favor of those reappointments will vote aye. Those opposed to reappointment and advise and consent will vote nay. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Boland? Aye. Kmack? Aye. Cronin? Aye. Kurd? Aye. Ewing? Aye. Frerichs? Aye. Greenfield? Aye. Haverly? Aye. Heinert? Aye. Jensen? Aye. Kennedy? Aye. Killer? Aye. Klum? Aye. Kolbeck? Aye. Langer? Aye. Maher? Aye. Monroe? Aye. Nelson? Aye. Nesseba? Aye. Netherton? Aye. Norstrup? Aye. Otten? Aye. Partridge? Aye. Peters? Aye. Rush? Aye. Russell? Aye. Soholt? Aye. Solano? Aye. Stalzer? Aye. Sutton? Aye. Tapio? Aye. Tiedemann? Aye. White? Aye. Wick? Aye. And Youngberg. Aye. Mr. President, there are 35 yeas.
Questions as to the advice and consent of those appointments having received a majority vote of the members-elect are hereby determined passed, and those reappointments are so confirmed. Now we're on to the consent calendar of bills. Again, these are non-debatable, or any individual may pull the bill off the calendar. They're traditionally non-controversial and had to have passed unanimously. So proceed with two bills, please.
Senate Bill 39, an act to revise certain provisions regarding permitted improvements on school and public lands, and Senate Bill 18, an act to revise certain provisions regarding the South Dakota Board of Technical Education.
Senate Bills 39 and 18, having received a second reading, are up for consideration and final passage. Questions on either bill, senators? Hearing on the question before the Senate is final passage of Senate Bills 39 and 18. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Boland. Aye. Kmack. Aye. Cronin. Aye. Kurd. Aye. Ewing. Aye. Frerichs. Aye. Greenfield. Aye. Haverly. Aye. Heinert. Aye. Jensen. Aye. Kennedy. Aye. Killer. Aye. Klum. Aye. Kolbeck. Aye. Langer. Aye. Maher. Aye. Monroe. Aye. Nelson. Esaba. Aye. Netherton. Aye. Norstrup. Aye. Otten. Aye. Partridge. Aye. Peters. Aye. Rush. Aye. Russell. Aye. Soholt. Aye. Solano. Aye. Stalzer. Aye. Sutton. Aye. Tapio. Aye. Tiedemann. Aye. White. Aye. Wick. Aye. Youngberg. Aye. Nelson. Mr. President, there are 35 yeas.
Thank you. Senate Bills 39 and 18, having received a majority vote of the members-elect, are both hereby declared passed. Title questions? Titles are approved. Second reading, debate calendar, one bill, Senate Bill 26, please.
An act to revise certain provisions regarding public grain buyers.
Senate Bill 26, having received second reading, is up for consideration and final passage. Senator Frerichs.
Well, good afternoon,
Mr.
Daddy.
President.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you to all of you for the kind reception yesterday for my family. Senate Bill 26 comes to us from the Public Utilities Commission, and certainly those of us that were keeping track of the news this last summer were most likely disappointed to hear about an incident in Kingsbury County where there was a grain buyer that has gone bankrupt, but also left a number of producers without receiving payment for the grain that they sold. Senate Bill 26 is in response to much of what happened there. It revises 3 statutes pertaining to grain buyers licensed by the PUC. These revisions are designed to strengthen protections for our grain producers. The main purpose of the bill is to add the requirement for Class A grain buyers to produce a balance sheet and submit it to the PUC Grain Warehouse Division at the end of each fiscal year quarter. The current statute requires that all grain buyers have financial statements prepared at the end of their fiscal year and that they provide updated financial information when they renew their license at the end of June. This bill will give the PUC 2 additional opportunities to review the financial condition of these Class A grain buyers during the licensing period. If you're curious about the hierarchy, you have the grain warehouse licenses first, which are the larger ones. Then you go down to grain buyers that are the Class A, and then after that would be the Class Bs. Since the PUC is proposing to exclude Class B grain buyers from the requirement, they are also changing the maximum allowed as far as annual purchase amounts for a Class B grain buyer, reducing the amount from $10 million down to $5 million. So therefore, having more of those that are in that $5 to $10 million range go to Class A instead of Class B. And finally, the bill clarifies that when a grain buyer's projected purchases exceed their current average purchase, that they must use the higher dollar amount when calculating their bond amount. I ask for your support for Senate Bill 26. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further remarks? Hearing none, the question before the Senate is final passage of Senate Bill 26. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Madam Secretary will call the roll.
Senator Bolin? Aye. Kamak? Aye. Cronin? Aye. Kurd? Aye. Ewing? Aye. Frerichs? Aye. Greenfield? Aye. Haverly? Aye. Heinert? Aye. Jensen? Aye. Kennedy? Aye. Killer? Aye. Klum? Aye. Colbeck? Aye. Langer? Aye. Maher? Aye. Monroe? Aye. Nelson? Aye. Nesseba? Aye. Netherton? Aye. Norstrup? Aye. Otten? Aye. Partridge? Aye. Peters? Aye. Rush? Aye. Russell? Aye. Soholt? Aye. Solano? Aye. Stalzer? Aye. Sutton? Aye. Tapio? Aye. Tiedemann? Aye. White? Aye. Wick? Aye. Youngberg? Aye. Mr. President, there are 35 yeas.
Senate Bill 26, having received a majority vote of the members elect, is hereby declared passed. Any title questions? Titles approved then. Announcements. Senator Peters.
Thank you, Mr. President. They are waiting for us up in 414, so immediately following the adjournment of today's session, we have our professional development on how to become a better legislator. So,
Thank you. Senator Frerichs.
Thank you, Mr. President. Be sure to come out to the FFA Legislative Breakfast tomorrow morning, 6:30. New location. It's at Drifters, 6:30, and folks from your districts will be there. Thank you.
Senator Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. President. Commerce Energy, 10:30 tomorrow morning.
10:30. Thank you. Senator Bolin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Ed tomorrow, 7:45.
Thank you. Senator Kamak.
Senate Ag and Natural Resources will be held Thursday and the 18th at 10 a.m. Senate Bill 24, we'll hear that in room 412. And just a quick observation, I had a blue jacket just like that. It just doesn't fit as well anymore.
Senator Rush.
Mr. President, Senate Judiciary will meet at 8:30 tomorrow morning.
Excellent.
Instead of our normal 7:45.
See, you're a giver. Sleep in. Senator Wick.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Joint Committee on Appropriations meets tomorrow morning. We're going to continue hearing from agencies. Transportation, Public Safety, Revenue, and Labor and Regulation tomorrow.
Thank you. Senator Monroe. No, you don't have a meeting, but
I wanna
there's
introduce
somebody special here, right?
Yeah, I want to introduce an incredible human. Stand up there, sir. That's my oldest boy,
Hey, Jason.
Jason.
Good to see you, Jason. Thank you for being here. In case you're on a game show, you would be your mother's oldest child, too. So, any other announcements? Okay, Senator Northrup, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. My grandson, Andrew, is here visiting today,
He's hiding, yes.
and he's met many of the members and has discovered that anybody in this building is very friendly, and we appreciate that friendliness. Andrew's having a great time. He commented that he had 2 suppers last night, which is really cool, and he had 2 SDSU ice cream bowls today, which that doesn't happen at his house, but so he's having a great time.
Good to
Thank
see you, Andrew. Why
Thank
don't you come up here, Andrew, while everyone applauds, and then you can. Okay. You hold that now and go ahead, and she's going to read the adjournment, and then I'll tell you when to hit it, okay?
Senator Kennedy moves that the Senate do now adjourn.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carried. Wow! That explains why I lost this finger. Thanks, Andrew. Bye.